Hola and welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you as always for joining me. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You don't need to like, follow or subscribe to any of the videos I put out there. Just put them out there where I can. Have a holly jolly great time doing so. So welcome back to Percival's Landing now, and what we must be up to a part 3. There's probably 4 or 5. Where we're putting in our batter up chippy box into a little bit of a coastal scene, coming off the boardwalk, entering onto the canal type of situation with an abandoned BMX track beside it. Now, in this video, isn't it ironic? Here is our little stack bar that we've actually made before with the Lego. So I've always been inspired in this kind of concept, but today's video, we're picking it back up, and today we're going to focus on getting this BMX track starting to take a bit of shape here. We're going to personalize and have a quick chat about the history of the BMX as I remember it in growing up in Whyalla, South Australia. And we're also going to customize some bikes and start getting it going. Now, it might feel like we're just about at the end of this video, but rest assured, I am still going to keep you hanging on a little bit longer, because we're going to put all this together. And then the final video, which will be a bit of a quicker one, is just the complete and utter glorification of the finished project, where we're going to put the finishing touches down, which is exactly where I'm up to now as we're actually filming this. This whole process has gone on for about 3 months, but I'm really happy looking at it there, where I'm just about to now put the last little bits down, and it's looking better than I could ever hope. So let's get stuck into it now. A little bit of history, get stuck in to see what we're doing, how we're creating this track. And what's really interesting about this is I can't find anyone else that's ever modeled a BMX track before. So maybe it's a bit of a first, and I'm really happy with what I've been up to here and what we've created. I can't wait for you to dive on in and check it out. Let's go. So I think you can see as we come down to basically the eye level of what I'm looking at, working behind the light in this instance, you can see that we're starting to create something a little bit interesting. Those rocks aren't what I was planning, but I think they're not too bad. Again, it'll all start making sense as we start finishing up the scene. Now we're going to work on the fence that needs to sit across the back here, and then we can start detailing up the BMX track. As always, a bit of research. Planet Earth, Australia, South Australia, and into my hometown of Whyalla. Now, we are going to just pay attention to a few things. First of all, originally, there was a BMX track when I was very young out here on what is known as the former airport. It is now the wetlands. They've developed it here for a lot of the stormwater runoff. It's a lovely area they've worked on, but the airport over here, and there used to be this kind of, there was even an up and over, but it was a very sort of salt pan almost effect. It was very boggy. If you took your bike there, it wasn't the best of all tracks to get to, but it did exist. Now, I don't have a lot of history at that point. Let's zoom back out now and back in, and let's head up to where the velodrome is, heading up toward the steelworks near the railway line. Good view there. Where the velodrome is, down the back bit here where the road is, there actually was a BMX track. In fact, that's where we're going to see a little bit later on there. They actually had competitions and races, and it was quite developed. I remember there was a little announcer's box up there that was wired up with a PA system. The iconic fencing that was around it, a lot of that isn't there now. But certainly the Greame Jose or Jose or Jose or Josie, however you want to pronounce it. It's not me, there's no F on the end. Velodrome that is there. It's a wonderful thing that is still in action today with the cycling. So it's good to see the Whyalla cycling community still heavily active at the moment. But after that, and from the late 80s, sort of entering into the 90s, once again BMX had re-emerged again in another era, and this time it was not far from its original location, I recall, but it was now located near the soccer field. Now, unfortunately, it's actually been quite deserted for some time, but they did have races there, and as you can see, there's the concrete start ramp that was raised up into the air. It also featured the mechanical steel gates that drop down when you commence the race, and you can see you literally went up, around, down, back, and around a big bank curve a few of the traditional jumps that you would expect. Now let's come back out of that, and that's a shame that's not there anymore, but I remember doing some great time there. And here's just a quick street view from it, but there's not much to see anymore, and I see they're doing some development there. Now, not far from that, and we're just going to make a little side note here, was also the Road Safety Centre in Whyalla. One of the, if not the best I have ever seen in all of Australia. We were really spoiled with this, taking a trip. We walked from school, usually got about 1 or 2 trips every year to the Road Safety Centre. What was great is after a bit of theory, we got out. They had actual working traffic lights and train signals. It's a wonderful thing. Everyone wanted the 3-wheel trikes. I don't know why. They were a hoot. It was a great layout, and it was open to the public as well. You could come in after hours and go for a ride around it. It's recently been resurfaced. It's a beautiful place, and we always got a bottle of Coca-Cola at the end of it. I think they were partly sponsoring it. I'm very sure that doesn't exist anymore, but crikey, it was a special place to go to. Now, just one other quick mention as we come out now was just this empty block here off the Lincoln Highway and Norrie Avenue, a major intersection. This empty block had a series of just jumps and things. I suppose you'd call it a pump track now is what they call them. But this kind of empty block with just some mounds of dirt that kids had sort of shaped, and of course most of it's not like it used to look now, but there was some great ups and downs to be had there. So nice bit of history, and that empty block is kind of, imagine that next to my store. That's what we're chasing here. Just another quick thing to note, you'll recall I zoomed in over here on some footage next to the soccer club of the BMX track that I recall there from the early 90s in Whyalla in the Road Safety Centre. And here's just a side-by-side comparison of that same satellite image taken today and one that was taken back from the 80s. That whole section of land, lush, green, that's truly as I remember Whyalla, and it's hard to believe it looks the way it does, but of course they're right on the tip of Goyder's Crossing near the Middleback Range. And Goyder's Crossing, of course, is a line, as you can distinctly see, that would run, that divides it between the cropping areas and the grazing areas of the aridness of the South Australian outback. So one side they do get some reasonable rainfalls, and you could be growing your lush fields of wheat or what have you, and on the other side you probably just want to let your sheeps and things run wild. You've probably noticed this appearing in and out in the time-lapse shot. Now this is just your standard Pico wheels kit, sheets of corrugated iron. And basically why it's been like this is I applied a little bit of graffiti. It's not a decal, which would have been better. It's just some card. And I don't have a scriber, so as you can see on the angle, it's just the look, so it's all flat. The other side is corrugate. Still wish I would have got that material to do it, but we've printed up some decals. And sorry to cut you off there, Joseph, but just really quickly, back to the AI again. I'm just using Microsoft's Copilot and putting in a few parameters like a seaside coastal timber sign or something like that. Percival's Landing, some of them were okay, but you can see some of the spelling wasn't right. No matter how much you go back, it's never quite right. While I was also there, I just took a few moments to come up with an idea for the BMX club that may have been there. There were some here that are better than I wanted to use, but the spelling wasn't quite right, and it just wasn't getting it right. And the one I've got isn't bad, but look at this box instead of BMX, but it's okay. The image that I have selected isn't too bad, other than I don't really care for whatever this cluster is going on around the hubs, but it's something. See what we can come up with. We're also going to add our Percival's Landing logo onto one of these, which would seem appropriate with its little life buoy on the other side to welcome you. And if you're just wondering, based on the artwork, and I'm only showing you because we're going to use something smaller, but if we look on one of the big ones, you'll notice, of course, I dedicated the name of that fishing vessel, which is similar to mine, to my dear wife. So, and of course, Mr. Percival looks very happy there. And then just customized one for the BMX club that would be there. Maybe a bit of graffiti, I don't know. And we're going to try and shape this onto our fence. So as you can see, I did
dabble a little bit once I put the glue down to scribe it a little bit. Look, the results were a bit ordinary, but at least it's a little bit of texture, and it didn't work out too bad, so pop them aside to dry at the moment. And now we just glue that fence into place. I did just lightly apply a little bit of rust, as you can see in the background, around the edges of the sign to blend it in. It's now time to introduce my annual pair of new shoes, and of course we're also celebrating Christmas with a new pair of Christmas socks. I thought the colour combination really popped, just like the windows in my room. Now we're just going to take a bit of a Citadel, a Grelin Technical Earth, and we're just going to create a few sort of dried up puddles in some sections that I left here. I actually just had a little bit of a blue tack that I had landscaped over to pull out, but it was a little bit of a mess. Still, nice images. Now we get to our BMX bikes, and I think it's only fair we have a quick chat about the history of what brings us here to BMX bikes as I remember them.
And it's also a big thank you to Mark at Antiques Central, a tremendous YouTube channel with some wonderful content on it. And in this particular instance, just taking a few screen grabs here where he's basically counting down some of the top 6 iconic BMX bikes, certainly in the UK where he is from, but many of them were found in the rest of the world as well. And let's not forget our Australian, and back to Australia once again with the iconic movie BMX Bandits. Certainly one of those movies that turned the young girl Nicole Kidman into a star, who went on to plenty of other stuff, up to and including another tremendous movie she appeared in, which happened to be Days of Thunder. And rest assured, for those of you out there, we'll be talking about that in a series of other videos regarding those wonderful cars from the original movie. And let's not forget they're remaking that movie again shortly in the 2020s. Anyway, in the meantime though, some iconic bikes here, and those delightful plastic wheels that were to be had. Who didn't want something like that? I'm not sure how easy it was to get them true again if they went a bit wonky. I certainly remember with some of them in the mountain bike world, the head ringlays or something, they needed to drop them into a deep freezer and that would get them back into the right shape. Transguest, anyway, sorry, I'm wasting too much of your time here. Let's get back to the BMX's simple, clean colours, the revolution of the chromoly frame, having the number at the front. Some of them had the padding around it. Really, it was those colours, it was the ensemble, and that's what we're trying to incorporate here. What I like to think is the BMX track that we've created here probably took up this entire site. That's why I've dotted a few of these old tyres around, and obviously in the future they decided to redevelop this, and while that shop's gone in, I'm sure in time this empty block will maybe be harbouring something else. But we've caught it just in the height of the 80s where old and new are meeting, and here we are. So some tremendous shots here, and I do apologise, I can't remember how I even acquired them, but Whyalla BMX footage. Of course, I could have just got footage from anywhere, but the fact that this was actually the Whyalla stuff and the colours and everything, this is pretty much what I'm doing. Plenty of tyres lying around everywhere, and that's just exactly as I can recall.
Yes, and just keeping that history of Whyalla going there, the Aussie rock band Daddy Cool did perform at the Whyalla Velodrome there in the 70s, so that kind of ties in nicely. Classic Eagle Rock. The gentlemen had their trousers up on this one. As you can see, these were those bicycles. I think these are scale model scenery BMX bikes, so they've all just been painted black as they advise once you've cut them and glue them and put them together. I'm going to go with the traditional 80s looking sky blue and the yellow. Now I can't create that much detail in there, but we're just going to use those colours, see what happens. And the colours we're going to use are going to be sky blue X14 and just a flat yellow. Any would do. I've got the Tamiya one, but I thought I might just do a different one just for different shade, although it'd be the same. And then we'll mix up a couple of other different colours as we go. As you probably just saw in that time lapse, I took some tyres and I just tried to paint them, and I wanted to make them look a little bit faded, so I mixed them up with a little bit of white paint because this is from its former heyday
of the BMX club. It's probably been unused for a while, and the shop was built. Maybe it took up more space, I'm not too sure. Because now what we're doing is just taking some tyres that were painted in different colours, and or certainly we're just taking a tyre that we obviously just added a bit of black wash to. We're going to dip it into a little bit of glue. And we're going to try not to drop it as we did, which is always the problem when I'm trying to hold the camera. I mean, I really am useless here. I'm trying to hold a camera and work one-handed. They're just tyres that have been cut up, and certainly, as you can see, sitting into place, it gives that kind of colour scheme you'd see in the 80s from the 70s fading through on what they did on their colour palette. Right. I didn't bother filming it because how were you ever going to see that and me trying to keep it steady? But here you go. We got a little variety, the red and sort of silver, a bit of a green and traditional one. There's our blue, sky blue and the yellow sort of tyres, just as a plain silver one in black. And this yellow one, which I kind of like the tiger striping of, I think that actually turned out quite well. Looks good on both sides. You'll see it in the final shots. So as they're all in place now, I'm just taking a light wash here on the brush, and you can see just putting it over, and it really brings out the detail in the tread on the tyres as it would start to be cracking and diminishing in the harsh sun. I just want to also quickly point out these other tyres you'll see deliberately dotted around into other areas. That's because this entire area, once upon a time, was probably the entire BMX track. But of course, development is making its way through, and we're losing these bits as we go along. To finish things up now, I'm just taking a series of just our pastels now, just dusting them into different areas to break it up and give the shades of where people are, defining the tracks, and it's getting hard and they're riding along. It also just gives a bit of detail where we had those dried out puddles from bits that aren't being rolled anymore, or trucks that can come in anymore and service the area, so it's just left to decay, and the kids are doing what they can to keep it alive. Joining the two scenes up, yeah, you're right, I should have just built it as one, but then I wouldn't have had a separate video for our bowling alley billboard. But I think from here you can see this scene is starting to take some interest. Well, now it's time to mark our key locations and bore a few holes in to get our electricals fitted in now, so we can start bringing the scene all together. Just drilled the holes. Now, just notice particularly the couple at the front here, obviously where you've got the edge here, there's also a piece of timber that needs to run to reinforce where the edge is going to join to. Now, as a result, it's just these wires which are very, very flat. But you can see what I've just done here. I just carved a little bit extra for where the post goes and the cord to sit down. Of course, this one's a bit deeper because the light just does come down a little bit from there, as you can probably see there. Whereas the others, it's just wire, so that bends easily. Let's try it out. Let's be fair, it doesn't really matter where I stand. Someone will yell at me for saying I can't see. Scale model scenery foliage, an absolutely must-have landscaping tool for everyone. To fill in all the gaps as needed. Now we take a few key trees and we're just sort of eyeing where we think this might need to go. Let's pop them in and we dive under the board now. Won't go into too much detail as always. It's the Woodland Scenics Just Plug lighting system, and pretty much every single light gets its own dedicated dimmer. I did end up wiring up those two lamp posts together because they just are strictly there for an ambient light. They don't need to be adjusted to give more. As long as they've got a soft glow, that's all we needed to achieve on those. As you can see, keeping the wiring as clean and as logical as possible here. If you're in Australia wondering where all these Woodland Scenics Just Plug lighting hubs are, look no further.
I swept out every possible supply I can, and now I order direct from Woodland Scenics in the USA, since we're still waiting on deliveries.
Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful little journey. It really is starting to look pretty good down there, and I can't wait to join you in the next one in the following week, where we're going to finish this scene up once and for all, get the illumination all flicked on, and make sure everything looks wonderful. But until then, please do stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you in that next one. Doodles!